Is there a herald?
That's my
Is
grandfather.
It's always creepy when that happens. I keep getting kind of a famous feeling.
You're right on.
It's such a gift that Tyler has.
I never thought that I would get this experience.
Everything he said was spot on.
We are not forgetting.
Do you want to know everything?
We are honored to be joined by Tyler Henry, who is a world-renowned medium. You don't need me to tell you that. You know who he is. Best-selling author. And when my wife found out that we had you, she goes, in person? I go, no, remotely. It's not going to work that way. But Tyler, it is an honor to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Steve, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to get to talk today and say hello to your wife for me.
I will. But what I'm curious about is this. I mean, I've read so much about you and I've watched you for years. This ability you have, describe what it is and when you knew you had it, please.
Sure. So I consider myself a medium, which really just means an intermediary between this realm and the next. And that's not an ability that I really identified as such early on. It was something that took years of moments of knowingness to kind of acquire. But my first moment of a premonition happened when I was 10 years old. I woke up one night and just had a total knowingness that my grandmother, my best friend, was going to pass away. And I went into the room to try to explain this to my mom, and we were interrupted with a phone call from my dad breaking the news to my mom. So that was really the catalyst, but at 10 years old, you don't recognize that as an ability and certainly not a gift. It was just something that happened.
It's interesting. I call it an ability. It is a gift.
You know, there's definitely different terminology around it. I think there's something to be said about it being a faculty that's developed like a muscle. And I also, try to avoid calling myself gifted. I think it's kind of pretentious, right? And I think we all have different talents that we can embrace. So
I want to understand a little bit about you in this way. The description, the word health anxiety, you experience health anxiety.
absolutely.
You may be able to tell remotely that I do as well. I do. I don't like talking about it, but it's true. To what degree, Tyler, for you, is your anxiety about health tied to the way you view death?
It's a great question. I definitely think that over the thousands of readings that I've done, I've seen so many examples of the fragility of life, how quickly life can be taken away under the most unexpected of circumstances. I remember in filming my recent show how overwhelming that was in being able to sit with somebody who had a loved one pass, who had passed in an umbrella accident of all things. And so an umbrella pole had flown off in a gust of wind and ended this person's life. So I have seen so many freak accidents and strange things as far as, that kind of reflect that truth, that it's given me an appreciation for every day. I'm very much hypervigilant in some respects. I can kind of completely relate to hypochondria in the sense that I am one myself. Just, I think, by nature of probably how morticians are hypervigilant, and people who see crime scenes are probably going to have a different approach to life. And so I think of it as kind of similar.
First of all, thank you for your candor in that regard. I'm curious about this as well. Reading people. We do this remotely. We do some of our broadcasting in person, but the vast majority of it is this way. Is it harder to read people for someone who has the gift, the ability you have, this way versus in person? And if so, what's the difference?
I found that there definitely are distinct differences, but the process is fundamentally the same. When I sit with someone in person, sometimes there are actually more distractions. You have the physicality component. People are inclined to respond and sometimes react and sometimes interrupt. And as a medium who has to kind of interpret, that can be a challenge. So sometimes there actually is an added layer of benefit to have a degree of disconnect, just so that one can kind of act as the interpreter. But equally, it varies. Every reading is different in its strength, and some connections, even from a distance, have been stronger than ones in person, and vice versa.
Skeptics.
Yes.
First of all, do you even care?
Yes, I think it's important to always care and to never stop listening to what people say on some level as far as, what you do.
Well, caring is one thing. Trying to convince people is another. Is there a significant part of you, Tyler, that tries to convince people who are skeptics of your ability in this regard, not to show off, just because you care deeply. Please.
Well, some of the most transformative readings I've ever done were for skeptics, people who are either scientifically skeptical, some were religiously skeptical. You have very many different faces of skepticism. And so to be able to kind of give someone like that a transformative experience is almost more gratifying than if I were already reading a believer. But my philosophy around skepticism is that it is important, especially in this day and age, to never lose sight of our critical thinking, to always have rationality. And that can be kind of surprising sometimes when we think of spirituality as being more subjective, and it can be, but I equally put weight on objective truths and having an awareness of the difference. And I think it's just important to see where the answers lead. Through firsthand experience, I think a lot of these things have to be witnessed firsthand to fully feel the weight of, and that speaks to the subjective nature of it.
Let's go back a little bit, talk about skeptics and actually doing it in real time. I could be wrong about this. The producer notes tell me that you were 10 years old. You were 10 when you foretold your grandmother's death, but also you were reading your classmates.
That's right. Yes.
Explain, how does that, do they ask you? Do you just say, hey, explain that to us?
Well, starting off, there was, as one would kind of expect, a very strong degree of immaturity. I was 10 years old. I had my first moment of knowingness, and I didn't really understand it or have any context. But as I would kind of go to school and particularly navigate the PE track and kind of walking with the other boys, walking my 30-minute mile, plucking dandelions, I would find that kind of would get me into a daydream kind of like state. And for some people, it happens during class. For me, it was outside. And in that state, I would sometimes share these feelings that I would get with classmates. In one instance, I told a kid about his grandfather, who he shared a peanut butter and pickle sandwich with. And that floored him. He didn't understand how I knew that. It floored me. I didn't understand how I knew it. But as time went on, there were certainly varying degrees of opinions about this weird thing that I was doing.
But now I have to ask you, not only how did the pickle and peanut butter kid respond, how did most, I'm sure you had a variety of reactions, how did most kids respond?
Yeah, most were kind of curious and found it to be cool. It was only after people I found went home and told their parents that we started getting a little bit more of the religious fear. People started coming back, and I started getting a little bit more isolated and bullied, which I think on some level gave me a thick skin that was an early predecessor to what I would need, being in public. But it definitely was a lesson on identity and courage and being true to oneself.
What's the religious response? What's the religious resistance? I'm Catholic.
Sure.
And is it in? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just talk to us.
Absolutely. I come from a Presbyterian background. My mom's side is Catholic, so we're a bit of a mixed bag. And there, unfortunately, is a little bit of stigma around firsthand spirituality among certain religions. A lot of religions encourage people to look outwardly, to a doctrine, to a priest, to a preacher. There's kind of a little bit of a scariness around firsthand subjective religious experience. Protestants kind of are a little bit more in accepting of that in some respects, but there's definitely within the text of religion opposition. People who view that book as defining their morality and ethics through and through. I encourage people, if they have that resistance, to consider what Leviticus says about haircuts or eating shellfish or wearing two fabrics. So there's a lot of nuance there, and I think so long as the focus is on leaving people better than you find them, that to me is divinity.
I want to put up the collective. What is the collective?
The collective was something we launched in the past year. It was a membership service that we are able to connect with people virtually all over the world. And that was such a fun opportunity because during the pandemic, we all got used to virtual connections. And I was able to basically launch the service and do group readings with people who might never have the chance to come to LA or let alone California. So it's been a really, really awesome opportunity to connect with different cultures, do readings unedited in real time. And that for me is really where the real magic is, to see it live in person, see that process and really see the responses. It's something when you're seeing a celebrity, it's something else when you're seeing, a person who is more of a private individual.
Tyler, do me a favor, team. There's a chat that we have over here. Put up the number again, because is this accurate? We don't engage in fake news. 600,000 people. What? Waiting for? I don't have 6 people waiting for me.
Well,
I have
goodness, I
nobody
bet
waiting.
you do. You know, if you do readings, I can kind of defer some to you. It is cool.
600. What is it like to be in such demand?
No, I really view it as a privilege and something that I don't take lightly. And it is so deeply humbling. I've kind of viewed those 600,000 as less of a wait list and more of an interest list, in the sense that I would have to be Methuselah to probably, knock out all those readings. But it is so humbling. I just think speaks to that universal nature of those questions that we all have, and how that really connects us. And at a time now more than ever, particularly through the collective, even, we see how people are united, not just through their loss, but through their love. And that's a testament of that, and one I don't take lightly.
We're taping on the 17th of October. This will be seen later. Yesterday, and I know my mom watches every show we do, every segment, and then critiques it, of course. Yesterday, October 16th, was the 3rd anniversary of my dad's passing. And so I'm not going to ask you to do anything with me, because that's self-centered, and while that's natural for me, I won't do it here. That being said, to what degree in the grieving process are you helpful to people? Please.
I think it really depends on where someone is in their grief. I don't encourage people to run off to a medium the second that their loved one passes. I think that a medium reading is most healing when a person is at a place where they have accepted grief as a natural part of life. I don't think that readings are a cure for grief. I don't think spirituality is a cure for grief. Grief is an ongoing process, I think akin more to a comma than a period, right? It's ongoing. And it's not something that I think we ever resolve or ever really find true closure around. When I started this work, I used to think, what is closure? Closure. And I found that there really is no true close. That love would have to go away for there to be a true close of that grief. And so because that continues on, it's a relationship, and one that I think evolves as time goes on.
Tyler, can you turn this ability, this gift off?
It's more of like a bit of like a radio dial, in the sense that I can kind of turn it down. There's always some kind of degree of background noise, usually vague impressions, either from the readings I'm going to do later on, sometimes my environment. But basically, when I go to do a reading, I scribble. And scribbling is just my modality of kind of turning that volume dial up, so to speak. And it just gets me to an altered state of consciousness, where I then can kind of focus and put the other part of my brain to rest.
Before I let you go, someone's not asking you, but you see someone on the street, you come across them, and something hits you. You read something about them, their life, someone who's passed over. Do you proactively, assertively engage?
I've learned that there's a time and a place. And the last thing I want to do is ever be counterproductive in someone's grief process. And I think it's so important that if a reading is given, it's given at the right time, when someone is open, when someone is receptive, when someone wants the experience. To be frank, some people might find a reading frightening or contradictory to their beliefs. And those beliefs might be essential to their healing and growth. So I really am kind of against, in essence, walking up to people. Consent is so important widely in so many respects, and it's true for spirituality.
And before I let you go, Tyler does live shows, and can they check out on the collective also where you are?
That's right. Yes, my website, thetylerhenrymedium.com. I have a whole list of tour availabilities coming up, and they're going to be really exciting, and as well as through the collective.
Let me say this to you, Tyler. I've known about you, read about you, seen you for years. To actually listen to you talk about what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and how much you care is at least as interesting. And I cannot thank you enough for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. I'm so appreciative. It's so wonderful to get to talk to you today, and I can't thank you enough. I look forward to next time.
Absolutely. I'm Steve Adubato. That is Tyler Henry, and he makes a difference every day. Stay with us.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Valley Bank, New Jersey Sharing Network, the Fidelco Group, Holy Name, Delta Dental of New Jersey, PSC&G, Johnson & Johnson, and by the Adler Aphasia Center. Promotional support provided by Meadowlands Chamber and by NJ.com.
Hi, I'm Abby. You might see me as an ordinary person, but I've been living with a brain injury since 2018. Opportunity Project gave me hope, and I've gained confidence through job skill training and helping my family. Despite my challenges with memory, I see a possibility to keep improving.
If you have a brain injury, you don't have to face your road to recovery alone. Learn more about Opportunity Project and its partnership with Children's Specialized Hospital.